The dust-caked pickup truck of Elijah Vance, a man who built his legacy from the earth up, pulled alongside Sterling Acres. He was about to fix a broken tractor, and in a world clinging to old divisions, it was supposed to end there. A simple neighborly gesture, nothing more. But Eleanor Sterling, heiress to generations of privilege, saw him and felt a flicker of the old, ingrained distrust. She'd been taught to see men like him through a lens of suspicion. A kindness, she thought, often came with a hidden cost, especially from those who had less. Yet, this simple act of shared humanity was about to ignite a spark neither of them could have foreseen. They weren't ready for the seismic shift, the quiet revolution this moment would bring. The sun, a fiery orb, was just beginning its ascent, painting Harmony County in hues of gold and amber. Elijah Vance, his hands calloused from a decade of relentless toil, guided his weathered truck down the winding dirt path that marked the boundary of his dream. On one side, the vast, ancestral lands of Sterling Acres. On the other, Freedom's Edge Ranch. Elijah's 80 acres, painstakingly carved from nothing but grit and unwavering spirit. He was 34. 80 acres of unforgiving soil, transformed into a thriving cattle operation. Every fence post, every blade of grass, a testament to his sheer, unyielding will against a world that often tried to hold him back. Countless 18-hour days, fueled by coffee and an unshakable belief. The crisp morning air, a fleeting balm, flowed through his open window. He savored the quiet, a precious moment before the relentless demands of the day. 50 head of cattle, miles of fencing, a water pump groaning its last. But as his truck rounded the familiar bend, where his land met the sprawling wheat fields of Sterling Acres, something stopped him cold. A crimson tractor, a defiant splash of color against the golden expanse, sat silent, lifeless. Beside it, a woman, a silhouette of frustration, pacing, even from this distance. Her distress was palpable. Eleanor Sterling, her phone held high like a desperate plea to the heavens, searching for a signal that would never come. Out here, in the heart of Harmony County, connectivity was a luxury, a whisper of the modern world that rarely reached. Elijah's first instinct, honed by years of self-reliance, was to keep moving. His own day was already overflowing, a tightrope walk of tasks. Getting entangled in another's troubles felt like a luxury he couldn't possibly afford. But then, a voice echoed in his mind. His grandmother's words, a bedrock of his upbringing. "Son, we don't leave folks stranded. Not in this life, not on this land." The land, he knew, humbled everyone eventually. He pulled his truck onto the dusty shoulder, the gravel crunching beneath the tires. As his door slammed, Eleanor spun around, her eyes wide. She was younger than he'd imagined. Perhaps 30, with a cascade of blonde hair pulled back, and telltale smudges of grease and earth on her denim. Her jeans, faded and worn, spoke of honest labor, not fleeting fashion. "Need a hand?" Elijah's voice, calm and steady, cut through the morning silence as he approached. Eleanor's blue eyes, initially guarded, swept over him, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. "My tractor," she began, her voice tight with frustration. "Decided this morning was the perfect time to give up. And I've got 20 acres of wheat that won't wait for the storm brewing tomorrow." Elijah nodded, his gaze assessing the silent machine, then the worried woman. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, his boots crunching softly on the dry stubble. She hesitated. A brief, almost imperceptible pause, then stepped aside. "Be my guest," she said, a hint of resignation in her tone. "Though I've tried everything I know." Elijah climbed onto the tractor, a familiar ease in his movements. He turned the key. Silence. He popped the hood, and his practiced eyes immediately found the culprit. "Hydraulic lines blown," he stated, pointing. "And from the sound it was making before it gave out, I'd wager your clutch bearings seized up too." Eleanor let out a long, defeated sigh. "Of course it is." She rubbed her forehead, leaving another streak of grime. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Elijah checked his watch, then glanced at his truck. "I've got some parts that might work. Give me an hour, maybe a little more." "Wait," she said, stepping forward, a sudden urgency in her voice. "I didn't even ask. What's this going to cost me?" "We'll figure that out later," Elijah replied, already striding back to his truck, his toolbox calling. "Right now, you've got wheat that needs harvesting. For the next hour and 15 minutes. Elijah worked with a quiet, focused intensity. Occasionally, he'd ask Eleanor to pass a wrench or hold a flashlight. She watched him, her initial wariness slowly replaced by a surprising fascination. Most people grew restless, bored by the intricate dance of gears and oil. But Eleanor asked questions, genuine, probing questions that revealed a desire to understand. "You certainly know your way around machinery," she observed, as he tightened the final bolt on the new hydraulic line. "Grew up fixing everything we owned," Elijah said, wiping his hands. "When you run a ranch on a tight budget, you learn to be your own mechanic. Or you go broke paying others. You're a rancher?" she asked, her gaze drifting towards the direction he'd come from. "That's your place over there." Elijah nodded, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. 80 acres, just past that fence line. Freedom's Edge Ranch. Been building it for 10 years now. "I'm Eleanor," she said, extending her hand, a sudden, decisive gesture. "I own Sterling Acres." Elijah took her hand, surprised by the firm, honest grip. "Elijah, pleasure to meet you. I thought old Mr. Sterling still owned this place." "He was my father," Eleanor said, her voice softening. "Passed 2 years ago, left me the farm." "I'm sorry for your loss," Elijah said, and he truly meant it. He'd heard the whispers through the local grapevine, but hadn't known about a daughter. Eleanor nodded her thanks, then gestured at the tractor. "Give it a try." Elijah climbed back up, turned the key. The engine roared to life, a powerful, steady hum. He let it run, listening, checking for any false notes. Then he shut it down, climbed off. "Should get you through harvest," he said. "But you'll want a full service after that. That clutch won't last forever." Eleanor pulled out her phone, then remembered. "No signal," she murmured. "Come back to the house. I need to pay you. And I want your contact information." "No need for payment," Elijah said, already packing his tools with a quiet finality. "We're neighbors, that's how it works out here." "At least let me get your number," Eleanor insisted, her voice firm. "For future repairs. I'll pay next time, whether you want me to or not." A faint smile touched Elijah's lips. He rattled off his number, watching as she typed it into her phone. A bridge built where a chasm once seemed to lie. Fair enough. As he loaded his tools, he could feel her gaze, a new kind of understanding in it. He climbed into his cab, started the engine, and drove away, leaving behind not just a fixed tractor, but a changed landscape. Eleanor Vance watched him go, a silent figure receding into the vastness of the plains. His hand had offered a brief, almost imperceptible wave, a gesture she returned instinctively. His truck, a relic compared to her fleet, rumbled down the dusty road, his mind already on the hard-won legacy of Stonehaven Ranch. Behind him, Eleanor stood alone amidst the golden expanse of Vance Estates, a sprawling empire of innovation and profit. She watched his silhouette disappear, a strange emptiness settling in her chest. Since inheriting Vance Estates, she had navigated a world of consultants, contractors, and shrewd business partners. Every handshake, every smile, came with an unspoken ledger. But she couldn't recall the last time someone had offered help, without immediately calculating the return, the leverage, the advantage. Her gaze fell to her phone, the contact information for Elijah Stone, Eli, now saved. A name etched into her memory, not just her device. There was something about the quiet strength of the man who had stopped to help a stranger, a black man whose land had been fought for, generation after generation. That resonated with her in a way she couldn't quite articulate. It was a dignity that transcended wealth. She turned back to her waiting tractor, a small, unbidden smile playing on her lips. Eleanor had always prided herself on being practical, ruthless even. Vance Estates hadn't become a multi-million-dollar operation through sentimentality or impulsive acts. It was built on logic, efficiency, and a relentless pursuit of progress. Yet, 3 days after the unexpected tractor incident, she found herself driving past Stonehaven Ranch for the 3rd time that week. She slowed, catching a glimpse of the property. Stonehaven was smaller, far less manicured than Vance Estates, a stark contrast to her gleaming greenhouses. But even from the road, She could see the profound care etched into every detail. The fences, though weathered, stood straight and true, a testament to enduring labor. The pastures, though lean, were vibrant, and the cattle, though few, looked healthy and content. It was an operation that spoke not just of honest work, but of a defiant pride, a refusal to yield to the systemic pressures that had tried to erase it. She told herself it was merely neighborly duty when she pulled up to his gate the following Saturday. In her hands, a basket of fresh vegetables from Vance estates, heirloom tomatoes, crisp cucumbers, sweet corn, the kind of organic produce that had made her farm a household name. Eli was working on a fence post, his muscles rippling under a sweat-stained shirt. He looked up, surprise momentarily softening the stoic lines of his face as she stepped from her pristine SUV. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a low rumble, setting down his post-hole digger. "Everything all right with the tractor?" "Running perfectly," she replied, walking towards him, the basket a vibrant splash of color against the muted landscape. "I just wanted to properly thank you for the other day. Brought you some vegetables from the farm." Eli wiped his hands on his worn jeans, his gaze steady as he accepted the basket. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Eleanor said, a hint of vulnerability in her tone. "But I wanted to." An awkward silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken histories and contrasting worlds. Eli glanced back at his unfinished fence, then at Eleanor. "You want some coffee?" he asked. "A rare invitation. I was about to take a break anyway." "That would be nice," Eleanor said, perhaps a little too quickly. They sat on his porch, two mismatched chairs overlooking the pasture where his cattle grazed. The coffee was strong, black, served in chipped mugs that had clearly seen generations of use, each imperfection a story. Eleanor found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did anymore, the relentless hum of her own ambition momentarily silenced. "How did you end up with this ranch?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Eli leaned back, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Saved every penny I made," he said, his voice carrying the weight of years. "Working construction, oil rigs, anything to keep this land. Bought it when I was 24. From folks who thought they could strong-arm a young black man out of his inheritance. It was rough back then. Spent the last 10 years building it up, one fence post at a time, one fight at a time." "It's a beautiful place," Eleanor said, and she truly meant it, seeing beyond the rustic exterior to the soul of the land. "It's home," Eli replied simply, his gaze unwavering. "What about you?" "Always planned on running Vance estates." Eleanor shook her head. "I was working in agricultural development, traveling all over, helping farms modernize their operations. Then Dad got sick. I came home to help. After he passed, I realized I couldn't let everything he built just disappear. So I stayed, expanded, turned it into something bigger." "Sounds like you're good at what you do," Eli observed, a hint of admiration in his tone. Eleanor offered a small smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm good at building a business," she admitted, the words tasting hollow. "The rest of it, the personal side, the human side, that's harder." Over the next month, Eleanor found more reasons to visit Stonehaven Ranch. She sought Ellie's advice on purchasing new equipment, even though her own consultants were legion. She brought him homemade meals, claiming she'd made too much and didn't want it to go to waste. She even invited him to tour Vance estates, showing him the state-of-the-art greenhouses and intricate irrigation systems. Eli was always polite, always helpful, but Eleanor noticed he maintained a certain, unwavering distance. He never invited himself over, never asked for anything, never pushed beyond the boundaries of a neighborly friendship. It was both frustrating and profoundly refreshing. He was a man unbought, unbowed. Then came the storm. It rolled in on a Tuesday afternoon, violent and unexpected, a furious tempest that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the land. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the raw power of nature, and wind tore across both properties with unusual, almost malicious force. When it finally passed, leaving a trail of devastation, Eleanor discovered that a large section of fence along her property line with Stonehaven had been utterly destroyed. Posts snapped, wire tangled in a mess of debris, a gaping wound between their lands. She called Eli, and he was there within 20 minutes, his face grim but determined. They worked side by side for hours, digging new post holes, stretching wire. Their clothes soaked with rain and mud, their hands raw. It was hard, physical work, the kind Eleanor rarely encountered, and she felt her muscles burning, her body aching, but there was something profoundly satisfying about it. Something real, something elemental, that her usual, sterile work lacked. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the bruised sky in hues of orange and purple, they took a break. They sat on the tailgate of Ellie's truck, sharing a thermos of water. The silence between them now comfortable, earned. "You didn't have to help with this," Eleanor said, her voice raspy. "It's my fence. It's our property line," Eli replied, his gaze fixed on the mended section. "Besides, good fences make good neighbors, right? Is that your philosophy?" Eleanor asked, turning to him, her eyes searching his. Eli was quiet for a moment, the weight of generations in his stillness. "I believe in doing right by people," he said, his voice low but firm. "A testament to an unshakable moral compass. My daddy taught me that," said a man's character shows in how he treats folks when there's nothing in it for him, especially when the world tells him he doesn't have to. Eleanor turned to look at him, a profound realization dawning. "Is that why you helped me that first day? Because it was the right thing to do?" Eli met her gaze, his eyes holding the wisdom of his ancestors, the resilience of his people. "Yeah," he said, a simple, powerful truth. "That's why. Not because I own Vance Estates, not because of what I could do for you." Eli shook his head, a quiet defiance in the gesture, "just because it was right. I didn't even know who you were that day, just saw someone fighting for what was right." Something in Eleanor's chest loosened. She had been privileged enough to recognize when people wanted something from her, and Elijah's complete lack of ulterior motive was almost jarring. "Can I ask you something?" Eleanor said. "Sure. Why do you keep your distance? I know I've been finding excuses to come by, and you've been nothing but kind. But you never." She paused, searching for the right words. "You never let me truly in." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "Because I've heard the talk," he said finally. "People in the community, at the rallies, they see you stopping by Beacon Hill, and they've got opinions about it." "What kind of opinions?" Eleanor asked, though she could guess. "That I'm trying to get close to you because of your influence," Elijah said bluntly. "That I'm looking for a handout, or trying to co-opt your foundation, or worse." Eleanor felt anger flash through her. "That's ridiculous, maybe," Elijah said, "but I've worked too hard to build what we have here to let anyone think I got it. By taking advantage of someone, my integrity might be all I've got sometimes, but it's ours. What if I don't care what people think?" Eleanor asked. Elijah looked at her. "You should. You've got a reputation to protect, a foundation that depends on trust. Getting involved with someone like me, it could complicate things." "Someone like you?" Eleanor repeated. "You mean someone who fights tirelessly, treats everyone with dignity, and doesn't want anything from me, except maybe a true ally?" Elijah didn't answer. "Because that's what I see," Eleanor continued. "I've had consultants try to overbill me, board members who wanted access to my contacts, even politicians who used my name to attract voters. Behind my back, you know what you've asked me for in the months I've known you? Nothing. Not a single thing." "Eleanor," Elijah started, but she cut him off. "I can't stop thinking about you," she said, the words tumbling out. "Since that first day you stood up for those families, you ignited something in me. I haven't been able to get you out of my head. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but it's the truth." Elijah stared at her, something unreadable in his expression. Before he could respond, Eleanor's phone rang. She glanced at the screen inside. "It's my operations director. I have to take this." She walked away to answer the call, leaving Elijah sitting alone on the park bench. When she returned 10 minutes later, her expression was troubled. "Problem?" Elijah asked. "Our mobile legal clinic just broke down. The repair company I use can't get someone out here for 2 weeks. We've got families who need immediate representation, or they're gonna lose their homes." "What about other repair companies? They're all backed up this time of year. Everyone is stretched thin." Elijah was quiet for a moment. Then he slid off the bench. "Come on." "Where are we going?" Eleanor asked. "To look at your clinic's lifeline." Elijah said, "I might not run an operation as big as yours, but I know how to get things done on the ground, Elijah." "You don't have to," Elijah interrupted gently. "I know I don't have to, but I'm going to anyway, because that's what solidarity looks like, isn't it?" For 3 days straight, Elijah worked on the mobile clinic. He arrived at dawn and did not leave until well after dark, only taking breaks to check on his own community projects and grab quick meals. Eleanor worked alongside him when she could, handing him tools, holding lights, and coordinating community support around his repairs. On the third night, covered in grime and exhausted, they finally got the clinic running. The engine roared to life, and Eleanor let out a whoop of relief. Without thinking, she threw her arms around Elijah. He stiffened for just a moment, then hugged her back. "Thank you," she said into his shoulder. "You saved us. You saved hope." When she pulled back, they were standing closer than they ever had before. The streetlights cast shadows across Elijah's face, and Eleanor could see the exhaustion there, but also something else, something that made her heart beat faster. "Why did you do this?" she asked quietly. "After what you said about keeping your distance, about protecting your integrity, why did you spend 3 days fixing our equipment?" Elijah looked down at his grease-stained hands. "Because you were right," he said, "about what you said the other day. I have been letting fear and pride get in the way of something real." He met her eyes. "I have been alone a long time, Eleanor. Built my whole life around being independent, not needing anyone, proving we could make it on our own. And we did, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that being independent does not mean you have to be alone." "I am scared to," Eleanor admitted. "Every relationship I have had since I inherited this foundation has been about what I could do for someone, what they could get from me. I am terrified of making that mistake again." "I cannot promise people will not talk," Elijah said, "and I cannot promise this will be easy. You've got a foundation, a platform. I've got a community fighting for its very soul, and a dream that's always going to be there." Eleanor stepped closer. "You know what I see when I look at your community fighting for its soul? I see resilience forged in fire. I see someone who built something real from nothing. Someone who does not take shortcuts, who treats his people with respect, who helps his neighbors without expecting anything in return. That's worth more to me than any endowment." She reached for his hand. "I do not need someone to match my privilege, Elijah. I need someone who sees me as more than just the owner of a foundation, someone who treats me like an equal in this struggle, even when our situations are not equal. That's you. And what about your board members, your donors, all the establishment who are going to question this?" "Let them question," Elijah said, his voice a low rumble. Serafina stood her ground, eyes blazing. "I have spent years running Heritage Acres, the way everyone else dictated, making decisions based on optics, on what preserved a fragile image, on what was expected of me. And you know what? I've been suffocating." She gripped his hand, her touch electric. "You, Elijah, you make me feel alive. You challenge me, you see me, you respect me, and you ask for nothing but my presence. That, in this world, is a rare, precious thing. That is worth fighting for." Elijah was silent for a long, weighted moment, the air thick with unspoken truths. Serafina held her breath. Then, a slow, genuine smile spread across his face, transforming it. "I have conditions," he said, his gaze unwavering. "If we do this, we do it right. I won't take a dime from you. I won't ask you to invest in Freedom Fields, and I won't live off your legacy. What I've built, I built with my own hands against every barrier. And that doesn't change. I wouldn't have it any other way," Serafina affirmed, her own resolve hardening. "And I have a condition too. You respect that I do not need rescuing. I am perfectly capable of running my land. We are partners, equals, or this does not work." "Deal, deal," Elijah echoed, his eyes locking with hers. He leaned down, a silent promise in his touch, and kissed her. It was gentle, reverent, as if she were the most precious thing he had ever encountered. When they finally pulled apart, Serafina's smile was wider, freer than it had been in years. 6 months flowed like a river, carrying away the old, ushering in the new. Elijah and Serafina forged something neither had dared to dream of. A bond built on unshakable respect and profound affection, They faced the whispers, the pointed stares at the general store, the hushed conversations that died the moment they entered a room together. Elijah's freedom fields continued to flourish. Through sheer grit and undeniable acumen, he secured a loan from a bank in a distant town, a bank that, for once, saw past the color of his skin to the undeniable strength of his business plan. He used it to expand his herd, to invest in the future he was building. Serafina connected him with her network of organic buyers, not as a handout, but as a strategic introduction between two formidable entrepreneurs. Heritage Acres thrived anew. Serafina found herself revitalized, making bolder decisions, trusting her own powerful instincts, having someone who believed in her, without seeking to control or diminish her, had unlocked a dormant strength within. They created an informal alliance, sharing specialized equipment, exchanging invaluable knowledge about sustainable farming, and occasionally lending a hand on each other's land during the demanding harvest seasons. Yet, they fiercely maintained their independence, each a pillar of their own operation, each standing tall on their own hard-won ground. On a warm, late summer evening, they stood together in the vast field, the very spot where their paths had first collided, beside that iconic red tractor. The wheat had long been harvested, leaving the land golden and serene. In the fading light, "You know what I realized?" Serafina mused, leaning against the tractor's weathered frame. "What's that?" Elijah asked, standing close beside her. "That morning when this old tractor broke down, I thought it was the absolute worst timing. I was drowning in stress, behind schedule, terrified of everything that could go wrong." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "Turns out, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. To us." Elijah smiled, a deep, knowing warmth in his gaze, and pulled her gently into his embrace. "Funny how fate works sometimes," he murmured. They stood there, silent, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting their neighboring lands in hues of fire and gold. Two souls who had discovered something profoundly rare in a world often defined by superficiality and transaction. They had found a genuine connection, forged in the fires of respect and unwavering equality, not born of need or advantage. The land stretched out around them, ancient and enduring, a silent testament that some things mattered infinitely more than acres or dollars. Things like integrity, partnership, and finding someone who saw you, truly saw you, for the powerful, resilient spirit you were. In the end, that was worth more than all the farmland in the deep south. And as the last light faded, and the first stars began to pierce the velvet sky, Elijah and Serafina headed home, together, ready to face whatever came next, side by side, as equals.